Jules is considered a full-length ballet in the States. Mr. Balanchine choreographed it in 1967. So it's stood the test of times for sure. And it's considered a full length, but there's not a real storyline. But there's 3 individual ballets, but they're linked together because they're all Jules. So Emeralds being the first ballet with music by Fauré. Rubies is the second ballet with music by Strawinski, one of Mr. Balanchine's favorites. And then the work I'm staging for the company is Diamonds, which has glorious Tschaikowski music. And I think that Diamonds, Mr. Balanchine always said that it was sort of like his tribute to Imperial Russia and the training that he received in Russia as a dancer. And so it's his tribute to that. So it's very classical and gloriously beautiful and set up pretty much very classically as well, with an opening sequence and then a central pas de deux and then some variations and then a big polonaise to close. So it's a tribute to his motherland. Oh, well, you know, it's interesting because in my time at New York City Ballet, I was there for 23 years, and so I got to rise through the ranks from corps de ballet to soloist and got to dance all 3 of these ballets in some part. So Emeralds is very different. It's long tutus, romantic style tutus, and the Fauré music is very lush and some of it is very soft and some of it is very lively, but it's very much more romantic, his romantic time. And then Rubies is altogether different. I mean, I imagine some of the public has seen it. Very jazzy with Strawinski music, hard to keep up with until you're used to it, the musicality of it. But it's very jazzy, which Mr. Balanchine loved in the States when he relocated to the States. He loved jazz and everything modern. So that's his tribute to the United States, I think. I feel very fortunate that I do this work where I am able to travel around the world and work with beautiful dancers like here in Vienna. I've never worked with the company before. So I was so excited when I was offered this opportunity. I grew up with Mr. Balanchine. I knew him from the time I was 8 years old until he passed away. So I feel very fortunate that I can share what I learned from him with this beautiful young generation of dancers that didn't have the opportunity to work personally with him. So I try to bring out as many personal sayings as I can when I'm working with the dancers. It is very important that it's sort of like passing it down from generation to generation, and especially with ballet and dance, it's such a physical art that it's important to be able to demonstrate it firsthand for the dancers to know. And it's, you know, many of them maybe haven't ever danced the style of Balanchine before. Some have, but many have not. And so it's I wouldn't say a struggle, but it's a push to really get them to do it the way it needs to be, because style is very different with every training and every choreographer, as I'm sure everyone sees when they go to see a mixed bill. Everything is so totally different. So the Balanchine style is particular, and sometimes it's a stretch for people, but they always strive for it. I think there's several really important things that I try to stress when I'm staging a ballet. First of all, the musicality. Mr. Balanchine was foremost a musician before he was a dancer, and so that was always super important to him, the musicality and how to use the phrasing of the music. And in particular, when you've got something like Tschaikowski, you know, you can't go wrong. So musicality certainly is one. The breadth of movement is something that's really signature of Mr. Balanchine, that every movement is on a very grand scale, and the port de bras is lush and open, and the chest is always open and not small and timid. So in order to get the dancers to travel and use the space with the musicality is another really important. And just the last thing would be just the intricacy of steps. He was very much into being very clear and precise with the footwork. So we have to put all those three things together. The way I heard the story is that he was inspired by a shop in New York City called Van Cleef & Arpels, the big jewelry shop. And from what I heard, he saw the jewels in the window and he got the idea to do this. He even, at one point, took at least one of the ballerinas, Suzanne Farrell, who he did diamonds for, to Van Cleef & Arpels, and they took photographs for the newspaper with her wearing the real diamonds as a headpiece or as a necklace. Not the costume, but the real Van Cleef & Arpels diamonds. So that's the story I've heard. And I also had heard at one point that he might have wanted to eventually add sapphires to the list, but he never got around to it, unfortunately.